you got to be like Mark Maron and just be recording without it.
Yeah, I know. You
No,
gotta just like touch base with everything. So,
yeah,
so yeah, so you've got the kids
got
and
the
you're doing, so how is that going?
It's going. It's the same issue everyone with kids is dealing with right now. It's like we have to find a way to work from home, and um, Jana sprained her ankle really bad the other day,
Oh
and so I'm
no.
doing a little more than normal, helping out just because she's like having trouble moving, but she's doing better today. But that made it a little more difficult this week. And of course, like Hobbs is 2, and he's got 2-year-old molars coming in, and for a couple week stretch, he had like ear pain, which we think was related to the molar, and we like didn't want to bring him to the hospital because it's this crazy time. And so we're just like, doctors have always said like ear infections um, usually heal themselves over time. They can throw antibiotics at them, but
Mhm.
it's not necessarily necessary. So, we weren't sleeping for a couple of weeks super well. And that's like, there was a moment where we both went, where was somebody just peeked in? There was a
Yeah,
moment
yeah.
where we both went, wow, it's like we have a newborn again. Like that's how it felt, sleeping wise. But for the most part, it's great. The kids love, I think, me being home more often.
Sure.
And they come in sometimes in the middle of my calls, and I go say hi to my students. And I don't lock the door. I could lock the door, but Jana also brings me tea and food sometimes when I'm working. So I'm like, this is not so bad. But yeah, it's fine. It's a challenge to do anything online, and I'm doing projects with 3 big bands. I have 3 big bands at my school, and
Yeah,
so
can you
you
talk about
do
like
3
what
big
you're
bands.
doing?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Can you talk about what you're doing with that? Sorry, I totally interrupted you.
No, it's fine. I was rambling. Uh, yeah, we got 3 big bands. So I'm at Michigan Technological University. It's my first year there as the
Right.
director of jazz studies. For the people that don't know, and I have 3 big bands. They've never had 3 big bands before. I started a 3rd big band this year because we had so many students audition, and we have 4 jazz combos. And I teach jazz improv this semester. Last semester I taught jazz history, so I teach 1 class, and then I have my ensembles. That's my job, and then 25% of my job is research. And so, whatever. A lot of that research has been composing or performing or recording albums. It could be anything related to music. Um, but my big bands, I'm having them each record a piece that we had been working on this semester, using the online DAW, the online digital audio workstation called Soundtrap, that
Yay.
I learned of because of you. Thank you very much. The first time I heard of Soundtrap was when you were using it with your students,
Hmm.
and I went, "What is this thing you're doing?" I don't
Hmm.
remember how that even came up. How did it come up? Do you remember?
I think you were asking about maybe something that was collaborative or some, I don't know. It was via the Facebooks.
Okay.
I don't remember the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I checked it out, and it's perfect for what
Mhm.
we are trying to do. I mean, if you're trying to multi-track record anything, and usually if you even know what that means, it's like I don't even need to say this,
Right.
because you're probably already using Logic or Pro Tools or something like that.
Mhm.
But for those of you that have no experience recording, maybe you only have a USB mic,
Mhm.
um, or even if you just want to use your computer speakers. I don't work for Soundtrap. They're not paying me, but like I've
They're
been,
not paying me either, but I feel like I've recommended enough that I should get some sort of cut.
it's time. It's time to get a Soundtrap sponsorship. I I've been telling everybody how awesome it is.
Yeah.
The built-in sounds are really great,
Hmm.
and I have this one microphone, and I have a 2-channel interface, a Focusrite Scarlett 4i4, um, and which actually it can become 4 inputs, I think, but it's 2 XLR inputs in the front.
Hmm.
Um, and I just have my one mic plugged into it. I'm using it now in tandem with Zoom. So Zoom is using the audio coming from my interface, which is why I can talk on a microphone and it sounds a little bit cleaner. Um, but I'm basically having all my students just record their parts individually. I laid down I laid down bass and drums before they closed the school, before they didn't let me allow me back on campus.
Mm-hmm.
I recorded the drum parts myself,
Nice.
playing drum set, and 2 out of 3 of those have been replaced by a real drummer playing their drum set / real drummer. One of my students playing their parts. So for the most part, that's been a success. The students have just then layered their parts on top of what I did. So
That's cool.
I wanted to record enough that the students had like the form and the tempo, and there's a click,
Mm-hmm.
that they could then layer stuff on top. I've
So
heard of stuff like smart music where you can actually play along to full ensembles or
right.
whatever.
So you're just like, is it so? Because one of the cool things I think about Soundtrap is that it's collaborative. So you're all on the same project and people are adding in. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I create a group first. In order to collaborate with another member of Soundtrap, you have to be in the same group. So I
Mm-hmm.
created 3 groups for my 3 bands. I invited all my students, sent them a link and a code. I got every single one of them to sign up and join it, which
That's
took
awesome.
a little bit of finagling, but made it happen. And 2 of the bands are very close to being done recording all their parts. The top band is also doing another project that's really cool that I bet we'll talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've been a little more delayed in recording their parts for their thing, mostly because a lot of them are focusing their energies on this collaboration we have going on with SUNY Purchase, or SUNY Brockport, I should say.
Nice.
So yeah, it's been cool. We're gonna make a video. So I have everybody doing mime videos for their parts,
Okay.
which means you record it first and then you mime yourself recording
Oh,
it.
okay.
So this way you can record, stop, record, stop, record. You don't have to think about video at all. And then what you do is you go back and you put the video on and you play the part, miming it
Sure.
along with the recording. And that's great. That's how that's how like Wolfpack does it, and like every major band that you're like, they record all their videos live. It's like, for the most part, no, they're not doing that. They're actually miming what they played after the fact, so that they can make cool videos, which makes sense. It's just an easier way.
Yeah, and it seems to me like a lot of ensemble folks have been struggling with the idea of how to recreate the ensemble experience, and you can't really. But this sounds like a really like meaningful experience for the students because they're playing, they're creating, and then they're also getting some technology experience with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the main issue, is that we're trying to think of it like it's an ensemble. We have to do an ensemble kind of thing. And like the other thing I'm doing with my top band, it's like, it's not that, but it's just a project. It's a cool project that we came up with for them to do. And I think that's more how I thought of it. When I learned that we were going online, I went, all right, we better come up with something cool. And when I heard about Soundtrap, I was like, that's it,
Yeah.
But also there's this other thing that we're doing, but I think the real benefits that the students are seeing is some of my students have never heard themselves play before. They've never recorded themselves and listened back. I had one student reach out to me and go, something's wrong with my microphone. It sounds really bad. What's going on? Can you log on and listen to what I just did? I'm like, sure. So as you said, everybody has access to the same file. Everyone can edit it at the same time if they want. They just, when you hit save, it uploads and syncs with everybody else. So this student recorded something and hit save so I could see it, and then I on my end listened to it, and I went, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the microphone. It sounds like, to me, it sounds like just not a very good sound on your instrument. And I try to be very, try to be like, hey, have you ever recorded yourself and listened back before? Question number 1. No, I haven't. Oh, okay. So perhaps it's not as much an issue of the microphone and the computer as it is maybe you pinching a little less hard and blowing a little bit more air, and see if you can record it again and warm up your sound, make it sound fuller, And so then he went back and did it again, and it was better. And then he was like, I still don't really like it. And he went back and did it again. It's like he's, for the first time, learning that he's got a bad sound and needs to fix it, all
Yeah.
because we're doing this, which I think is a really, I mean, it's like, what's more valuable than that? I mean, it's like an incredible moment when a student has a sort of a moment of self-discovery in that way, you know, and doesn't even he didn't even realize what he was hearing.
Mhm.
But I, you know, that being able to do this remote recording project has really opened up a lot of things like that, where students are kind of taking a little bit more responsibility for their stuff. They have to record their part individually themselves. So they have to learn the DAW, and they have to, you know,
Mhm.
I put them through workshops and I showed them how to use the program and everything, but you know, a lot of them put off recording for a month so they forget what I said.
Yeah. Well, and it's also cultivating that individual musicianship that we often talk about that but isn't necessarily cultivated always in a large ensemble experience.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. What is the other project that you were talking about or going to talk about?
Yeah. So our top band, the lab band, is doing a collaboration with SUNY Brockport, uh, which is a university in the New York system,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a school of dance there. And a friend of mine, Greg Woodsby, teaches music for dance class there, and he's also a staff accompanist, and he was the accompanist for the Boston Ballet. So he's like a really amazing piano player and percussionist, and a really old friend of mine. We played in a 12-piece salsa band together
Nice.
for 4 years in college. I did all the business. I booked all the shows and kept the account and paid the band members. And
Mm-hmm.
he led all the music rehearsals. So we were kind of like a team.
Nice.
Um, and we both remember uh, rehearsing that music for like hours and hours and hours, and then finally playing the first show. And there's tons of salsa dancers there, and we were like, "Oh, oh, that's what this is. This is, you know, you don't like." You don't really understand how intertwined dance and music are until you experience it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh look, the music is elevated by the dancers. The dancers are elevated by the music. This is a symbiotic relationship. And so that was Greg and I. That was our first experience with that. And of course, he's gone on to work with dancers in his career, and we connected, and we were like, hey, we should do something. And so what we decided was we would have my students make 30 seconds of music, and his students make 30 seconds of dance choreography, and his students will videotape themselves, and my students will do some combination of video and audio. um, and then they will exchange videos, and then they will do their own thing on the other person's video. So my musicians are writing 30 seconds of music to the choreography video, and the choreographer is writing 30 seconds of choreography to the music thing.
Oh, wow.
So they end up with two different video
Yeah.
collaborations. And then they are supposed to, and most of them have done this now, where they did a Zoom call and they just talked. Some of them talked for an hour. I mean, it was wild. It was really cool to see. And they just talked what worked, what didn't work, you know, why, you know, what is this that we're doing? Who are you? These are the kinds of things we want them to explore.
Mhm.
And then they're going to make a third. Either they're going to modify one of the previous videos, or they're going to make a third project, kind of using everything they learned from the previous two. And so we're now in this stage where they are making a third thing, whether it's editing something they already did, or modifying something they already did, or creating something new. And I went through all of these yesterday and listen. I had already listened to a whole bunch of what my students had done, because we've been having Zoom hangs where we just share. Everybody
Mhm.
shares their screen and then shares what kind of music they're doing for this project,
Sure.
and then we talk about it. But I yesterday finally went and like watched every single dance video and watched every single music video, or listened to every single music recording, and got to see the kind of work that's being done, and it's really fun and really exciting. I was beaming, you know, I was like almost tearing up, just like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
um, that they're making this great music. And it's also like, as an educator, it has taught me not to underestimate my students,
Mhm.
and that they're capable of a lot, and it's like, that, but then you hear them like create their own music, and you're like, whoa, these
Yeah.
are like deep humans with real music inside of them that is waiting to come out, and just giving them the opportunity to do this allows them to kind of spread their wings, which has been really fun to watch. And my students are engineering students. My students are mechanical
Oh,
engineers,
that's fantastic.
material engineers. Very few of them there are no performance majors at our school. We have
Mhm.
sound design majors, and we have theater, entertainment, and technology majors. So we have like tech related music degrees, but we don't have like performance related music degrees. But my students are great. I mean, great musicians. It's really very fun.
I love that you talk about that because you know that like a lot of my advocacy is for students who love music but may not necessarily see them as necessarily musicians, but like involved in music. They still are musicians. And I just think that's really great that you are engaging with these students in a way that is super creative and challenging and not underestimating them just because they're an engineering major and they're not necessarily a performance major.
Right. Right.
You know?
I thought about it like when I took this job, that was something I considered, like, hey, I'm going to be working with all non-majors.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for the level of talent that I'm going to have? What does that mean for what kind of music I'm going to be able to program? What kind of music I'm going to be able to write for them? What kind of projects we're going to be able to do? And I think, I think it's important not to underestimate what your students are capable of. But I
Mm-hmm.
also thought about how, like, at the high school level, it's not like people are majoring in music at the high school level. It's like you're dealing with everyone, and they're all going to go off and major in other things. And in some ways, it's like that. It's like I'm dealing with students with varying levels of talent coming in, but all with this like underlying love of the music. And my students are really, like crazy smart. There's T-shirts, there's Michigan Tech T-shirts that say "Crazy Smart Michigan Tech." Um, they're just like, they are super smart,
Yeah.
and so they get a lot of stuff. They
Mm-hmm.
also try to brain a lot of stuff that needs to be felt, and so there's a certain amount of like I'm trying to get them to feel the music in addition to understand it from a mathematical standpoint. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've easily learned as much as they have
Mm-hmm.
throughout this process, throughout my first year as an educator at the college level. I mean, but for those of you that don't know, I was a full-time freelancer for a decade. So this is my first full-time job ever. I've never had a full-time job ever. It's crazy. Um, and it's a tenure track,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. It's been fun
Awesome.
to be in this world and learn.
Amidst all the things. Well, we just have a few more minutes because then I have a meeting with another student.
Oh, that's all right.
But
Well,
I'm just curious, have there been any challenges for students acquiring technology? Because I know for a lot of students that's been issues, and you're way up there.
yeah, we are. We're way up in the UP.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if there's been any issues with students having access to technology.
There have been internet connectivity issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I don't think we haven't had any issues with students that don't have laptops,
Mm-hmm.
or like students that don't have internet access at all. At least I haven't. I bet there have been cases like that. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
there. But I have some students from like Escanaba, Michigan, or like places that are pretty rural, and they have trouble with the internet connection. They have trouble with having video during video calls.
Mm-hmm.
So I teach a class, jazz improv class this semester, and that was who I was on the phone with, the Zoom with,
One of
right
those
before
things.
you, and we do a fair amount of playing. And for a while I was playing keyboard, sharing my computer sound, playing keyboard through a DAW, and they were playing along to my keyboard playing. And that allowed me to like very quickly go, all right, we're going to do this key. All right, we're going to do this key. All right, we're going to do this key. We're going to do 2-5-1 in this key. I could kind of fly through things and not have to pull up YouTube videos and go play along to this. But there was a lag in what I'm hearing from my students too. So I think I had to get creative with like, how can I make sure I'm also hearing their time feel and their groove, because that's the thing that I can't analyze when we're doing a Zoom call because of the lag. So then I have them record themselves with recordings and send me stuff. But there's a student in that class that deals with some connectivity issues, and other students in that class that deal with like their parents are home now and working, and so they can't make noise. They
Right.
can't play their trumpet or their saxophone while their parents are working, or the internet's super slow because their parents are on Zoom calls all day.
Mhm.
Um, so I think access is an issue, certainly, but thankfully it's been less of an issue for my students than maybe some others.
That's good.
But yeah, that's the hard thing, right? Like if all schools, I've heard this argument made recently. If all public schools are going to go online, then the internet should be free for everyone,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
And it's like if we're going to require, if public school is free and students are going to public school, and we're going to require that they take online classes to finish their school, and this may be happening all next year too. We don't know.
yeah.
We don't know. I read an article recently that said fall of 2021 might be the next time we have concerts again,
Oh,
or like massive gatherings. So, whether or not that's real, I don't know. But it's like we're preparing to be online
sure.
for part of the fall
Yep.
potentially.
Yeah.
Um, And having worked at McNally Smith, I was just telling my students, having
Mhm,
worked at McNally Smith, a place that suddenly closed with no notice to the students and no notice to the educators,
mhm.
uh, I'm very much like whatever we say in department meetings, I'm immediately going to my students and be like, this is what we're talking about. This is what's happening, so that they're in the loop on what we're dealing with. Because I just remember so vividly the students being left high and dry at McNally Smith and feeling like
Yeah.
feeling like it was just a horrible situation that could have been handled better. And
Mhm.
so throughout this process, I've been communicating with my students, hey, this is what we're talking about in our department meetings.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad about it. Obviously if there's something that's private or whatever, I wouldn't say that, but things about preparing for fall potentially being online. Yeah, I'm going to tell my students that, hey, we're
Mhm.
required, but we're also required to take an online training course at Tech, every faculty member.
Mm,
Because there are some faculty members that are more comfortable with the online thing than others. And
mhm,
I think there have been some frustrations with students, and some students have struggled because of that,
mhm,
and struggled just because they're having to do labs and
mhm.
other classes that are really difficult that really should be in person. Uh, what a weird time, a hard time for educators. But I think it's also an opportunity to be creative and come up with a new cool way of learning to play music.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.